All right, we can officially begin. Welcome. Welcome to my masterclass from Overwhelm to Inner Peace. And the subtitle is How Inner Child Healing Helps You Feel Safe Again. I'll take a minute to talk about confidentiality. We want to preserve this as well as respect in the chat that you treat comments and reactions to each other um, with respect because we want this presentation to be in a sacred space. So, for you and for me to create a sacred space, you might move to your heart. One teacher has told me focus on your brain and then move it down to your physical heart. So now we can be connected, not just with your mental brain, but with your heart's wisdom. And breathe, because breathing is so essential to life. And we could spend quite a bit of time talking about the breath, but that's not what we're about today. One way I know of creating sacred space is moving into the place of gratitude. And I will start by thanking you for showing up today. It honors me that we have all of you here, each of you here. I am particularly fascinated by the topic of inner peace because when I'm not in inner peace, I'm in distress. Something is bothering me. And as I will talk about, it's an opportunity when I'm not in peace to look at what's there so I can return to peace. And I'll talk about all of these pieces. So let's move into a sacred space. Thank you. Now, my official bio is short. I became a PhD psychologist in 1981, a long time ago. And in that time, I first worked at the University of California, Berkeley, with students. And then when I had an early retirement opportunity, I ended my time there and began a private practice. The private practice afforded me the chance to explore, and I spent decades learning more about personal development, about energy healing. I went to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing more than 20 years ago, a 4-year program, and learned a lot. Because once we got there, we learned it wasn't so much about energy healing, but it was an express train through personal development. We learned about healing ourselves. So that's what I spent doing up until now. So that's the official bio. And by the way, I look fine on the surface and I operated successfully. So, what's the real story behind the surface? Very quickly, I'm going to tell you that I was born in Hawaii to Japanese American parents. And if you know anything about Asian cultures, especially Japanese, Stoicism is part of it. What do I mean by Stoicism? You learn to repress and suppress your emotions so you can be pleasant, polite, and fine on the outside. My parents were stoic, but they also were depressed. So you can imagine how quiet my family life was like until 2 years and 3 months after I was born, my twin sisters showed up and they were not quiet. And what I've learned recently is the way I deal with such noise is to become absent. And that's how I became absent in my life. So much of my life, suppressing my emotions, and whenever anything's disturbing, just become unconscious. So, in many ways, for decades, I was unconscious until 11 years ago. Oh, the other theme is at 7 or 8, had a talk with my aunt, whose house I visited often, and she told me, "You don't have looks like one of her daughters and personality, but you do have intelligence, so stress your mind." And I paid attention. I used my intellect from that point forward until 11 years ago. 11 years ago, intuition broke through my intellect to give me the phrase, "Listen to the cries of your heart." I didn't even know what that meant, but I was writing for a chapter in a book, and I just followed that phrase, and intuition was directing me the whole time to begin my personal journey to heal my heart. Listen to the cries of your heart. And this is kind of the theme of what we're doing today, listening to the cries of your heart. So, what that led me to was inner child healing. And so I practiced and focused on that for 5 or 6 years, and intuition broke through again to tell me you need to do this training, which was MAP training, MAP, which is make anything possible, which I'll talk about toward the end of the presentation. But armed with inner child healing and MAP, I was ready to step up. That's the real story behind this in the surface. All right. I'm dividing my presentation into 3 sections. A for awareness, C for connection, and E for empowerment. Awareness, I don't know whether you think about this, but I see awareness as the capacity that allows us to see, to be aware of what we're going through. I see it as a way of turning light into our situations to see more. And we're going to look at where the pain is, but this is getting ahead of myself. How many of you are familiar with this character for crisis? Wei Ji. Crisis. I forgot to put that in. So the first character can be alarming. The second, G, is often interpreted as opportunity. And I learned in Wikipedia that the reason why this was popular was when John F. Kennedy was doing his major speech, he used this. And so that's what it became. G was known as opportunity, but technically, it means pivotal point. So what we're going to talk about today is what may seem dangerous, but it's really a pivotal point. So I am going to spend the first section and the second showing uh, negative points, seeming negative points, distress, and negative emotions. And I am introducing them to take you to where you can pivot. Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my favorite wisdom teachers. He says, most people are afraid of suffering. In this presentation, we turn away from suffering often. But suffering is a kind of mud to help the lotus flower of happiness grows. I don't know whether you know this, but lotus blossoms grow in very muddy ponds. And it grows up to reach the surface to produce this lotus flower. So Thich Nhat Hanh has said this, and Pema Chodron has says this, that if we could see that we are covered in mud, and in order to have the mud leave us, we have to look at our suffering so we can move to happiness. Okay, I am going through a series of giving you an opportunity to become aware. Before I do that, I will summarize by saying using awareness can feel like danger because when we admit that something is not working, when we see our exhaustion, when we acknowledge our loneliness, for example, it can feel destabilizing. But in the moment, this honest seeing, we are at a pivotal point. We can stop pretending. Pain becomes information. Change becomes possible. Awareness is not a collapse. It is turning. So say yes in the chat. If you wake up already tired, even after a full night's sleep, say yes in the chat. If your body carries tension in your neck, jaw, chest, or stomach most days, check right now. You might characteristically feel that your backbone tight, your shoulders tight, your neck. That's where I carry my tension. Say yes in the chat if you push through exhaustion instead of listening to what your body needs.
We're getting a number of yeses.
Put a yes in the chat if you ignore headaches, digestive issues, or anxiety because there's too much to do.
Lots of yeses, Anne.
Yes. Now let's move to another area, wealth or career. Put a yes in the chat if you are successful on paper, but feel strangely unfulfilled. I see the yeses coming in.
Yes.
You're in the right place. Put a yes in the chat if you feel constant pressure to perform, achieve, prove yourself. Put a yes in the chat if you rarely celebrate your wins because you're already focused on the next task. Okay. Put a yes in the chat if you secretly fear slowing down because everything might fall apart. Am I putting words to some things you don't quite realize? Put a yes in the chat if your work consumes so much energy that there is little left for joy or creativity. Now we move to the area of relationships. Put a yes in the chat if you often feel responsible for other people's emotions. You know, somebody's unhappy and you're concerned and you get into it. Try to figure out what's going on. Put a yes in the chat if you hesitate to speak your truth because you fear conflict, rejection, or disappointing someone. Now you'll have to tell me because in my place, I cannot see anymore.
Um, there have been a number of yeses for all questions that you asked.
Yeah, as they come in, as I go through the last few, tell me, put a yes in the chat if you say yes when you really want to say no.
Again, a chorus of yeses here.
Okay, thank you. Put a yes in the chat if you feel alone in carrying your responsibilities, even when surrounded by others. You feel alone.
Again, a number of yeses.
Finally, put a yes in the chat if you long to be fully seen and understood, but rarely let others see your vulnerability. You don't let your vulnerability show.
A number of yeses again, Anne.
Thank you. The final question. How many of you wake up and become aware of the world, scrolling through your news, social media, and you remain, or you're disturbed, your peace is disturbed? Say yes in the chat if the world disturbs you.
Again, a number of yeses.
Okay, thank you for all your yeses. So, if you answered yes more than a few times, this is not random stress. This is a pattern. This is how you're living. And that's the whole point of this awareness section, for you to acknowledge the pattern of stress that you may be living under. And awareness is not about blaming you for this. It's about looking at truth. And truth is the beginning of freedom. So we will go to the next section on connection because awareness has opened the door to this. Now we can walk inside. In this section, we are going to be talking about connecting with the inner child through emotions, beliefs, and patterns. So before we go into the details of that, who is the inner child? Say yes in the chat if you're familiar with the concept of the inner child, and you can let me know, Doug. I'm curious.
Yes, sir.
Are most people saying yes?
Uh, I don't know if most, they're scrolling by pretty quickly.
Okay, I noticed that we have 34 people with us.
It's not 34 yet.
Oh, because there's some that are double?
No, 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 it's not 34 yeses.
No, no. I said noticed that we have 34 participants. So for those of you who joined later, welcome, welcome. I am so glad that you're with us, and I hope the time together will be helpful to you. So we're in the section C, the a second section, and we're making the transition to the inner child. And I'm seeing that a bunch of you know about the inner child. Well, you're going to learn a bunch more because this is my specialty. Okay, who is the inner child? The inner child is not weakness. It's a part of you that was created long ago when you were hurt. You'll have to excuse me. Suddenly my pages slip and I don't know where my next page is. So let's see if my slides will guide me through this section. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about are signs of the inner child. We're going to talk about them in terms of anger, fear, sadness. The signs of the inner child are triggers. Because when you were hurt in childhood, you felt unsafe to be, unsafe to have desires, needs, unsafe to express them or have them met. When you were hurt in childhood, the pain, the experience was so intense and impressive. Trauma parts, inner children were created to help you survive. Trauma parts are inner children. And the whole point is survival. That's why you're here today. The trauma parts work, the inner children worked, and you have survived. But as you admitted in the earlier section, survival doesn't mean that life is good and peaceful. It's disturbing because survival only provides so much protection and doesn't provide you what you need to get to inner peace. Okay, so the trauma parts provide beliefs or what I call impressions about yourself and beliefs and impressions about the world or what life is all about. Trauma parts also created patterns or strategies to survive and to get what wasn't provided in childhood. For example, already you can tell from how I described the inner child. The inner child didn't feel safe. So one of the patterns, many of the patterns were created in an attempt to get safety. One of the most painful things that happened, maybe I have it on the next slide, no, don't want to go there. Oh, we can go there. Is that beliefs about the self come up, get created, and I go through them. And as I go through them, put in the chat the number that relates to you, that you realize you have the belief, I'm not good enough. And Doug can just notice that and let me know if there are people saying yes to that belief. Number
Uh,
two.
yes, there are a number of people.
How many of you have felt I am alone? A deep sense of feeling alone in your life, in the world. Say yes in the chat. Number two, or two.
A number of people are reading ahead
Okay,
and marking four,
marking the numbers.
five.
Okay. Um, Three, love has to be earned. Four, my needs don't matter. Five, it's not safe to feel. I really got in touch with how my inner child does not feel safe to feel. Imagine that's what under what's the next word? What was under under um, my stoicism? The idea is it's not safe to have feelings. So I didn't have feelings for decades. Okay, ready for the next one. And everyone can jump ahead and put the number in. I must be perfect to be loved. I should expect the worst. That's sometimes why people don't want to celebrate a good thing because the idea is, you pay attention to that and it invites the worst. It's there. Number eight, there's never enough. Ah, scarcity. How many of you know scarcity? If I speak up, I'll be hurt or rejected. How many of you know how it means to fade into the background? Be a wall paper? Is that what you call that? Be so quiet that no one knows you're there. And 10, who I am is not acceptable. So you're writing in the number if you have that in your belief system.
Joy says I'm a fly on the wall.
Okay.
Shelley adds that she basically can't do anything right, which is number 11, I guess.
Excellent for coming up with something creative. Um, Making mistakes is one thing. So the belief is I cannot make mistakes, or it could be a pattern. I know this one well, and it's not operating right now because as I am trying to find my next page of my script, I'm not panicking. I know that you will keep going. Okay. So we went through the beliefs, and now we can move to the patterns. Remember, these beliefs were created when you were one, two, three, four in your early years. You may not even have had words to it and may have been a feeling. But then as you grew up, you could put words to it. And this is how ChatGPT put it together for me. Beliefs formed at 5 years old in the bedroom or something like that, but it still runs in boardrooms. All right, so let's move to patterns. Remember, this is all about survival. And so we're going to name 5 patterns that you will write yes in the chat if you recognize that this is what operates in you. So this is the portion of extending awareness to what the inner child is all about in you. And before I start that, I want to check into the time. We're doing great. All right. Remember, the inner child is not the enemy. The inner child is loyal to your survival. So say yes in the chat if you recognize yourself as a people pleaser. You're the one who agrees to extra work at work or at home, anywhere, or you say yes to favors even when you're exhausted or resentful. How many of you can feel that tendency to volunteer? Maybe not even volunteer with say, I'll do it, but you just move ahead and do it. And that's the people pleaser. And the drawback to that is you lose touch with your own needs. You burn out. You might become quietly resentful. And you're that quiet worker. You're invisible. So, how many yeses in the chat to the people pleaser, Doug? Can you count?
It's challenging because they move by so quickly. Uh,
Okay, we're getting yeses. Anyone saying more than that?
yes, Joy says she's getting better at creating boundaries.
That's
Jennifer
important.
says, I was an island for years as the one that does everything. Jennifer will say used to be, but not as much now because hurts too much to do that. Uh,
And good for you to recognize the hurt that you feel when you do that. Any more?
no, not currently.
Okay, we move to the next pattern, the perfectionist. This is the person who can really get into details and making things as perfect as they can. When you do a presentation or an email, because you feel fear making even small mistakes. This is the part that I mentioned before. I recognize, I thought I took care of perfectionism because I adopted the idea instead that good enough was good enough. But the part that feared making mistakes still remained.
Larissa says yes to number two. Pre-rejection swallows me before I get the chance.
Perfectionism?
Yes.
Okay. The drawback is you feel the constant pressure, or you don't feel the constant pressure. You operate under the constant pressure to be flawless. So that joy, spontaneity, and the rest are sacrificed to avoid criticism or failure. Do we know the word failure? Do we know criticism? Ah, A part that I don't have in this presentation formally is the judge. Don Miguel Ruiz, in his book, The Four Agreements, in the forward part, introduction, talks about the dream of the planet and the judge. The judge is that voice that's telling you, you forgot this. Oops, that's a mistake. Can't you do better? Constantly judging and criticizing you. So, how many people know the judge as the inner voice that is constantly there, not only criticizing you and your life and what you do, but turns to other people and looking at their deficiency, their mistakes, judging?
Patricia says, yes, constantly rewriting emails, recalling emails and correcting. Um, and Virginia says that if there's no appreciation, it increases stress.
That's a wonderful antidote to the perfectionist or the judge. Appreciation, moving to that place of appreciating. So you can say a presentation, and then the judge is there, and they say, let's move to present appreciation and begin to look at what you're appreciating or what you can be grateful for. That quiets the judge for the time you're in that spirit. Okay, next pattern, the overachiever. You measure your worth by productivity and accomplishments. How many of you can look back and see that you've climbed a ladder, a corporate ladder, or some kind of internal ladder of making sure that what you do moves up in terms of quality, in terms of depth, in terms of, you can see how the perfectionists can get there in there as well. But you think that your life is about achieving, of doing accomplishment, accomplishing. The drawback, no success feels enough because you're chasing external validation. And even when you get awards or acknowledgments that somebody can say, hey, that was great, you hear it, but it doesn't, you don't let it into your heart because that's what's closed with the strategies that we're talking about. Remember, it's about survival. It's not about filling your heart. So are people saying yes to being overachievers? And anyone saying anything more?
Well, I want to circle back to something that Jennifer said, which I thought was very germane to your talk. It is, I'm always afraid I will hurt someone's feelings like I was hurt before, so I don't do what others did to me.
Yes, that is certainly a pattern
And,
of,
go ahead. I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Shelley said nothing was good enough for my mother, and I took that in as a child. I had to be perfect, an overachiever, and to please my mother to survive.
Yeah. It affords me the opportunity to say that inner child work involves going into your childhood often, especially your parents, your interactions with your parents, what you were told. For example, uh, parents who always wanted to see what your report card or any kind of report around your progress in school looked like. And if their concern was really high, they would question an A minus. How come you don't have A pluses? What's wrong with you? Any judgment, criticism like that activates a pattern in you. By the way, regarding the last thing about feelings, your feelings were hurt. You felt rejected. It moved you to a place where you felt, I'm not good enough. I'm worthless. I don't deserve anything. And feeling all those things, you make sure, the child makes sure oftentimes, I'm never going to do or say anything that creates that kind of pain that my mother created in me. I'm going to make sure that I never speak in anger or any critical way because that is painful. And I don't want anyone to feel that way. So you become attuned to that way of living in the world, living in your life.
And there's actually a very interesting comment from Clarissa. Clarissa says that she was getting letters from Yale and Stanford in high school. Her parents were both addicts and didn't even notice, so it never feels like enough. And I never went.
Whoa. So this is where your parents kind of create your reality in so many ways. So that if something wasn't important to them, you just didn't make it important to you. You use their standards, their patterns, their seeing as you're seeing. And because they were adults and your parents, the child thought they knew better and didn't realize that you took it all in. So the presentation today, going through the patterns and the beliefs, is one way of shining the light in your experience to see one way in which your adult life is being created by these patterns. Okay, the caretaker. You step in to fix everyone's problems, everyone, in your family, at work, among your friends. When somebody is expressing that any signs that they're suffering, you're there. You want to know about it or you pay attention to it because internally you feel that their happiness depends on you. When you just say it to a person, do you think that that friend or that daughter, sister, whoever in the family, that their happiness depends on you? You would say, no, no, no. No, that's not the way I am. But it's often so quiet in you that you operate from the idea that you need to be a caretaker because their happiness depends on you and what you do for them. Obviously, the drawback is you overextend yourself, and guess what? You attract one-sided relationships. Look at your relationships right now or in the past. Can you see that you were the one who was doing the giving, who was doing the caretaking? And because you spend so much energy, attention on others, you don't know your own needs. They go unmet. And maybe fatigue and quiet resentment results. How many own up to being a caretaker? And do we have any comments, Doug?
Yes, there is, hold on one second. D says I was just a scapegoat. My present was just for people to regulate their emotions. So I had to say, yes, I was a caretaker since childhood, but never was mirrored because they needed to be mirrored. Even
Mhm.
after 30 years, she feels invisible. And Joy mentions about a son that has numerous problems like ADHD, autism, depression, OCD, and she also is stuck in a caretaker role at the same time that she's trying to become a paralegal and
Wow.
feeling depressed because of that.
Wow. That's quite a challenging situation to be in. And as you were reading it, Doug, I thought anyone who has a family member or a friend who are challenged by autism, being on the spectrum, being neurodiverse, um, and have health issues, um, can get into that person requiring so much care and attention that, and especially if it's your child, how as a parent can you turn away? Well, some parents do anyway, but if you're sensitive at all, you're caught. And how do you get beyond that? And I'm going to get to a place in the next section where I make this statement that your unconscious, your subconscious creates your reality. In your subconscious are all your traumas, all your patterns and beliefs. So out of that, they're creating your reality. If you can get to the source of how a special needs child or person is in your life that demands a lot of attention, and you get to addressing and healing that part, what gets created in your present day reality, it's not that they're going to go away, but something about the situation is going to shift so that your energies are going to be freed. I hope I can explain this clearly in the next section. Okay, anything more on the caretaker, Doug? No?
Ye- yes, if I pulled away from that screen. Uh, there's Clarissa, who was always the parent. Her brother took his own life in 2020. My other brother is mentally and physically handicapped from a car accident. Now she
Whoa.
now she is starting to have health issues. Jennifer mentions about how she never took care of herself until her mom went into a nursing home. Now she's learning to love herself for the first time. And
Yes.
she's not sure I can since she doesn't know how.
Yes. Wow. Um, I hear you. I see you, and I want to make so many responses to both of you. Um, I want to address in the next section all of how you might do something about the challenging challenges and suffering that you're admitting to and showing us in your vulnerability. Thank you. Say yes in the chat if you're the lone warrior, you're super self-reliant. This is the young child who, in their experience of being hurt, found no one else there but herself, himself. And a quote decision was made. I guess it's up to me. If I'm going to have anything in my life, I have to do it. And because he or she felt alone, their trust in others was broken because parents weren't there. Trust was broken there. No one else showed up, so trust was broken there. God didn't show up, so trust was broken there. There's so much about trust that leads to being super self-reliant. So you become the person for yourself, which means that you rarely ask for help. Why would you? You can't trust it because you believe you have to do it by yourself. This reminds me of when I came to San Francisco on my pre-doctoral internship. For some reason, we moved about 3 or 4 times in a period of about 3 years. And I had 2 kids who were 13 and 11 or thereabouts. And whenever we moved, we three, plus my son's friend Raymond, moved us each time, did all the packing. It never occurred to me to ask for help, to ask my friends that I had made during the internship for help. I did it all by myself. No one knew about it because I kept it to myself. That's an expression of my super self-reliance. And as a solo practitioner, as a psychologist, therapist, coach, you're in your practice by yourself. Unless you have a mentor or a consultation group, you're in it alone. And that suited my super self-reliance. And I depended on no one. When I went into training programs, same thing. I did what was needed and I did myself, rarely asked for help from anyone, my fellow students, my teachers, etc. And getting into therapy or counseling, guess what? I was not trusting there either. So I rarely got much out of it because I didn't trust. I didn't know it. I always wondered why I had to do these compulsory things, did them, and it was a waste of time. So the drawback, independence becomes isolation. And what you miss out on is emotional support and an intimacy because you're carrying burdens that you believe you cannot share. How many of you can see that you do this, beginning to suspect that you do this? Say yes in the chat and let me know what you're learning through the responses, Doug.
Well, Joyce says she's spending money for taxi rides too often because she doesn't like asking for help with rides or anything. And there's a number of other yeses that are coming in.
Mm, reminds me of how Doug offered to drive a friend to the airport. She was going to take Uber, which would have cost her $120 at least,
$150.
$150. So Doug took her, but she must be, yeah, I can see that she must be a super reliant, the lone warrior type. Anyway,
Patricia says she left home at age 16, so she's had to rely on herself.
oh, yes, yes, that tells a lot. Leaving home as soon as you can speaks loads about your the childhood wounds that you experience.
And Virginia mentions that the trust issues of her parents were passed down to her.
Absolutely. Yep, we do that. Okay, I just checked the time and noticed that I have 27 minutes left. So let's move on. I've got four more of these. The controller. Having things out of control doesn't fit. It brings such fear and agitation up in some ways. So you plan every detail. And then you struggle to delegate because you fear that other people won't do what you delegate them to do, and then you lose control. So you don't trust. The trust is also an issue of the for the controller. You don't like chaos. The drawback, life is tight and stressful, and relationships suffer because you need to be right or in control. There's no trust, there's no spontaneity. So when you hear people in a group begin to suggest things about what to do, it begins to make you nervous because you want to have control, but you don't dare say, I want this, let's do it, or anything controlling like that. I remember when us counselors at the counseling center would gather to go someplace for lunch, say, and no one would say, let's do this. Everyone was deferring. Uh, and that's what happens when you become anti-controller or a quiet controller who isn't willing to speak up. Life becomes very stressful. All right. Any comments under the controller, Doug?
Um, Joy says she feels like a doormat.
Uh-huh. A doormat is a people pleaser, right? You want to please, you don't want to say no. Somebody mentioned boundaries. To stop people pleasing, you have to start having boundaries, saying no instead of yes. So the people pleaser, the tendency has, besides not knowing, when you know your needs, you realize that you need to say no a lot of the time. And it's not easy when you don't understand your anger, know how your needs are preserved, your truth is stood by if you're constantly pleasing people. Say yes in the chat if you're a workaholic. You know how to stay busy. You know how to pay attention to what's happening on the outside. You're driven by the need for external validation, the workaholic. Just look at your life. How busy are you? Do you have space to breathe?
I want to relate another angle to this one.
Yes,
Uh, Workaholics often are driven that way to avoid feeling other feelings, that if you're so busy, there's no space for repressed feelings to surface.
absolutely. Which is going to come to the another one. Any comments to share?
Uh, Shelley said she was overworking as a distraction, as I mentioned.
Yes,
Virginia mentioned overworking as an escape.
yes.
Um, Clarissa mentioned that her health has forced her to rest.
Ooh, which is a lovely tangent that I can spend 30 seconds on. When you don't take care of your inner child, when you don't um, take care of the conflicts in your life, the struggles in your life, they begin to show up in your body. As a healer, I learned that conflicts on other levels, when they don't receive the attention, it shows up finally in the body. So if you have chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or different kinds of health problems like autoimmune diseases, have digestive issues, heart issues, all of these things are indication that there is something uh, that you're not paying attention to. And the effort in this presentation is to help you see what you may be trying to ignore. Because if you haven't experienced some health system, look now and invest in your inner life because we don't want you to faint unexplainably, have heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, any of these rampant health problems. Anything to add, Doug?
Uh, Patricia mentions IBS and digestive problems, and I can
Yes,
relate to when I had incapacitating pain from my back and leg, that it forced me to reassess my whole system of self-care.
right. Thank you. Moving along. The avoider, this is something that's kind of already been discussed. You don't honor your emotions. You don't get into difficult conversation because you want to keep the peace and avoid the discomfort. You avoid feeling discomfort, which is what I brought up earlier, that what we're presenting can bring up feelings or can begin to disturb your peace. So if this is touching you, because you're an avoider, remember the Chinese characters for crisis. One element is the negative, the other element is the pivotal point. We are moving to the pivotal point and we need to move so we can finish without things being left out. So the drawback is when you avoid, you don't have your feelings in conversation with people that will create vulnerability and intimacy. When you avoid, the issues grow and your life begins to feel very flat and unfulfilling. Any comments, Doug?
Uh, D mentions she masks with anger.
Ah, good
So
to
the
know.
so the other feelings don't come to the forefront, I would imagine.
Yes,
And Joy mentions she doesn't like conflict, so she procrastinates. I assume from having those difficult conversations.
right. Procrastination is about fear. Here is kind of a redundancy, the hyper responsible caretaker. So I'm not going to dwell on that because it seems to be taken care of and I need to move to other things. How many of the 10 do you see in your life? You can list a number, or you could list three top patterns by number. But the important thing is, how long are you willing to pay the costs, the drawbacks that I mentioned? So, Doug, are you getting a sense of numbers?
Mm. No, but Clarissa mentions she's done paying the cost. And I find that Kenneth says 1, 4, and 5. I find that often these patterns do shift, uh, and there could be many that can be present at the same time.
Okay, moving on. Empowerment. Empowerment that I'm going to cover in 15 minutes. Actually, I'll move into it. The first is emotional reset. The second is healing the inner child. And underlying that is transforming your inner world. First, get this. Every form of distress that you experience, every form of suffering, every form of negative feeling, upsetness, is an invitation. Now think about it. These experiences that you feel every day, many of us learn to move away from discomfort. But if you saw them as an invitation, maybe you wouldn't turn away so quickly. That's the emotional reset, to change your response to negativity and saying, something is calling me. It's an invitation. Have I made the point clear? Now, the second is healing the inner child. The inner child has written the adult script that you live by. The inner child has created the world you live in through the inner child's beliefs and scripts. So, in order to heal, in order to have an original script, let go of the scripts that you're following, to release the belief and patterns, you need to heal the inner child, which brings the topic of the power of the subconscious. Do you know that in every given moment, 95% of what is affecting you comes from the subconscious mind? There is only 5% that is conscious. And there's a good part to this because in the subconscious mind are conditions surprise. No, didn't have. What is in the subconscious are all the things that keep our body going, our heart going, our breathing, which is too much done unconsciously, and that needs attention. But what is in the subconscious are core wounds, the emotional implants, the limiting beliefs, the survival patterns, the repressed emotions, anger, fear, guilt, sadness, unresolved memories that are affecting you, the internalized voices of the critic, the judge, and so forth. That's what, and the last item, subconscious programs and scripts. So all of this is in the subconscious. So if we want to make any changes, we have to address how do we access and do something about what is in the subconscious. My answer, oh, before we get to my answer, what you may have used is willpower. You recognize these things in your life and you said, I'm going to change this pattern. I'm not going to do this. You trying to use willpower. And then you notice that you don't succeed very much because willpower is conscious effort. And you have all the unconscious, subconscious forces working against you. Same with affirmation. There are conscious efforts putting up what you want instead on post-it notes all over so you can be reminded to be positive, to believe that you're good enough, etc., etc. Or you move into programs to teach you don't have a negative mindset, change it to a positive mindset and show you all the places and the ways you do this, all on a conscious effort. I believe that that is energy that is not effective. So, in order to move to connecting with the inner child and using the subconscious, I want to introduce you to, before that, to remind you your everyday reality comes out of your subconscious. If there is lack, your subconscious is creating. If there is suffering, your subconscious is creating it. If you want something different, isn't it time to work with the subconscious? Two experts in the area tell you your subconscious is running your life more than 90% of the time. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a geneticist, says your life is a printout of your subconscious programming. So my answer to this is to use MAP, Make Anything Possible. This is where we take your subconscious and train it to become superconscious. The superconscious is able to neutralize and release the pain of trauma, your limiting beliefs, and persistent patterns. Do you get this? You can use your subconscious by having it trained and use this to neutralize and release the pain of your traumas and everything else that's contained there. And that's the work I do. I have brief testimonials. EJ says, I feel so much better from 90 minutes yesterday than I have with years of therapy and deep personal work. I'm still in shock how quickly it works and how profound the change is. Another testimonial from someone with whom I worked longer. Anne came into my life after illness and major loss, cancer, and loss in terms of a divorce and death of a dog. When I could barely function, in just weeks, she helped me find calm in chaos. And over months, I became happier than ever before. Thanks to Matt, I now live peacefully, grounded in my true self. She helped me reclaim my joy, her true self. So, MAP is a process that can be used to get beyond the inner child who is hiding your true self. So, if you want to release the patterns that created your adult script, if you see the advantage of having the power of the subconscious working for you, would you put yes in the chat? This is not a commitment. This is an acknowledgement of the material I presented. That especially that conscious efforts don't work. And maybe you should consider that using the power of the unconscious, subconscious, would be affording you the power to walk forward and upward. So, in a few minutes, if you would like to share one insight, one decision, one perspective, something that we can end our time with so we can know something of the flavor of your experience, please share before I offer you an invitation. Which Doug will tell me? Nothing coming in, Doug?
Yes, I was typing, sorry. Yes, there's a number of yeses that are surfacing.
Any takeaways?
I don't see any takeaways. Oh, there's a question. Is hypnotherapy the only cure? I think you addressed that issue.
I did not talk about hypnotherapy at all.
No, no, but she was asking about hypnotherapy, and I think asked if it was the only cure, and it's
Hmm.
obvious from your talk that MAP is a way of accessing the subconscious
Right. And
regions.
I'll just MAP is a way of doing it, and hypnosis is. But MAP is so much more than that, unless the hypnotist has vast knowledge and wisdom. Because with MAP, we can treat cultural patterns, we can treat past generational pain, we can treat attached spirits, we can treat past lives, etc. There's a lot of power and comprehensive healing done there. And then there's something that you said that brought something else to mind that I forgot. Oh, there are many more ways to heal than what I do. However, they need to be based in love with a capital L. They need to be connected to divinity. MAP, the trained superconscious, is an expression of the divine part of you. You need the connection to divinity or love with a capital L for healing to happen, however it comes. Some healers, beyond their techniques and process, are connected in their hearts to that so that they can perform um, healing that is necessary. I For me, it happens through MAP as I work with people that I can touch upon the love that's coming through me, touch upon their doorway to their superconscious to bring the healing in. Anything else in the way of a question?
Um, D had a question about I think it was D, a question about scientific psychiatric research or scientific publications.
Okay. This reminds me that if you go to the um, website, it's called mapcoachinginstitute.com. You will find a lot of information. They have a lot of programs that they're offering to introduce you to the various ways you can get involved with MAP. It used to be that there were segments showing um, brain mapping. So they showed the rewiring or the neural activity that happens with MAP. So they had some volunteer who, her normal state, where there are not many areas of her brain being colored, showing up. But with, you might message Nico about a recording coming, Doug, if you have the time. So, um, and while she was being mapped, her whole brain, all the lights were on, which shows that working with your subconscious through map accesses the wiring in your brain, which can shift so that your neurology reflects how much healing has been done. EMDR is one of the other methods that works with the brain in doing bilateral stimulation so that the corpus callosum is open so the brain connects. So there is that capacity there. However, MAP does this in a more holistic way and yet more specific as well. Anyway, I said that.
And I
So,
think it might be helpful if I've forgotten your website as well. I think
yes, I can say that, and you can put it in the chat. My website is, HTTPS colon slash slash heal your heart with com. All running together, heal your heart with com. Can you put it in the chat?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
And
And by the way,
the doctor is DR.
yeah, DR. So, by the way, you can always message me through the links that Eventbrite sent you. I'm here to respond to any questions, any requests, etc. So I invite you to have a chat, which is 45 minutes in length, where we can talk about your next step. I can learn more about you. We can talk about your issue and what your next step might be. It's not, and I'm not trying to sell anything. I am trying to be with you as sort of the continuation of my presentation here to talk about what more or how MAP might be able to help you, what you're doing might be able to be extended, whatever. It's a time to be together, and I would treasure that. So when you go to my website, you on the Calendly website, you can choose any day today till the Friday and beyond. But I want to spend the time this week to talk to those of you who got something, who felt something you want to explore further, want to continue our conversation, just to spend time together. to book a new meeting, a breakthrough call. And if there's any trouble in this process, you can always email me through the messages I sent you so you can be clear and gain clarity. So it's 11:33. I want to thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stop the recording.